Okay, there. I'll get a thumbnail that way. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nichol. And today we are joined by my friend, Jill, who I guess initially like Instagram friend. You also train from time to time at the same gym that I train at. And we have some mutual friends. Mark, for the longest time, you've hung out with. And now you hang out with Danny and those guys from time to time.
Yeah.
But Jill is a BC resident, a female hunter, and killed this really nice BC mule deer this year, which is kind of what sparked this conversation. But we're going to have a deeper conversation about hunting in general and what it's like to be a woman in the hunting space and maybe specifically BC. So let's go back to the beginning. Where did you grow up, and did you grow up in a hunting family?
Okay, yeah, this is my favorite question because I get asked this a lot. I grew up in between 100 Mile House and Salmon Arm.
Okay.
Kind of moved back and forth between the two. And I come from a long line of hunters. So my grandfather was big into hunting. He was actually a taxidermist as well.
Okay.
So around a lot of animals, dead and alive, growing up, right? And grew up with brothers and a dad that were heavy into it, and would obviously piggyback them when they would allow it. But, I mean, as most women, we get left behind.
Right.
Yeah.
So how many siblings?
I've got 2 brothers and a sister.
Okay. Yeah. And is the sister older or younger?
She's 16 years younger.
Oh, right. I've seen this. This is like wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks more like a niece, and it's like your sister.
Yeah.
Your parents just decide to keep going? What? Did somebody get remarried or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So she's my half sister.
Okay. Does she hunt?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does she want to?
No, but I feel like she has the grit in her.
Okay.
Athletic wise, because we also come from a pretty athletic family.
Right.
So she's heavy into sports, and I'm like, I think I could see her in the mountains.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was hunting like growing up? Like, did it consume the family like kind of year round? Was it like one big hunting trip a year? Like, what did it tend to look like as you were a kid growing up?
Yeah, so my parents were split since I was 2.
Okay.
So hunting was really big on my dad's side of the family, and then my mom as well. But my mom's father passed away quite young, so wasn't really that big on her side because it's a lot of women.
Right.
And then my dad's side of the family, big into hunting all year round. I had a stepdad growing up. He brought my brothers hunting a lot, brought us all out a lot. And because we grew up in Salmon Arm, like you could just go on a day hunt.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't have to be this big extravagant thing. Although there was times that they'd be gone for a couple weeks. I wasn't able to piggyback any of those.
What was the animals? Like, are people primarily chasing deer, or is there other stuff going on as well? Is there bird hunting? Is anybody chasing elk? Like, what are most people going after in the family?
Yeah, I think my family are big on sheep, elk, goat, deer, bear, honestly, everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My dad has almost every animal hanging in his shed, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he goes right out of his backyard. He lives up in the caribou.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So when does hunting become like kind of one of your identifying characteristics? Like, is it something you gravitated right into as a teen, or did you drift away and then come back to it later on in life?
Yeah, I drifted away. I got pretty heavily involved in sports at a young age. And I think that's also why I didn't go on the big trips with the family, was because I was so involved in sports and couldn't step away from that.
The timing too, right? It's amazing how many people I'm talking, like fall is like heavily sports oriented for kids. Like I had just talked to a buddy who had to cancel his elk hunt this year because he started teaching his kid or co-coaching his kids lacrosse team. So yeah, it's a tough time of year to go away for 10 days.
Yeah, and I think seasonally in your life too, you know, have children And there's a sacrifice you have to make.
Right.
My brother is living that out right now. He's got 2 sons, and they're under the age of 6. And he's
Right.
realizing that hunting just isn't in his life at this moment.
Yep.
And that's okay. But he knows that eventually he'll be taking these boys out hunting.
Yeah.
And I think seasonally you have to make a choice that, okay, I'll sit out for a couple years, sacrifice raising a bomb child, and then you can, bring them into it.
Yeah. I'm coming out. I'm pretty selfish, so it's not like I stopped, but definitely getting away was challenging all the way up till 6, 7. The funny part is, now that my daughter just turned 8, my wife's now okay with me, like much more okay with me leaving, because my daughter's much more self-sufficient. But now it's my daughter. It gets very challenging. Like, she gets very upset. We're very close, like very much daddy's girl type of situation. And now it's like the wife doesn't give a shit if I'm here, but the kid hates when I leave. So it's like, it's kind of this new challenge. So, and I keep telling her, like, a few more years and I will take you out of school as much as you want, man. So it's like, you can come with. But I think that's a really interesting insight. And I think we can apply it to more things as well. Like, there was a couple years where I focused almost exclusively on building my business. And because I did that and then created revenue generating opportunities, now I'm at a point in my life where I have even more resources that I can focus back on hunting. So I think being able to step out and prioritize the long term over the short term. There was this cheesy Instagram clip I just watched, but it was this kid in a lake, and he was defining discipline. And he basically said, discipline is prioritizing long-term gain over short-term comfort. And I think that holds up really true in this situation, like being able to step back and say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice something right now, and it's going to pay off over the long term.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And something that our children are kind of lacking nowadays. Like, things in the world are so, if this isn't working, just end it.
Yep.
Something new. We'll start something new. I think we need to teach these kids that, like, we make sacrifices for the long run. Like,
Yep.
Stop looking at everything at such a short window and look at it like, okay, I could build up this kid, and then he can be helping me pack out these animals, and teaching them that, this is where your meat comes from. We're better fueling our bodies for our future, for a longevity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have a son, right?
I do. Yeah. He's 12 next month.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, and that was another reason why the big gap. I was a single mom right from the start. And it's different for a mom to say, hey, I'm taking off to go in the bush.
Mom guilt I never had that guilt leaving my kid. I was like, thank you for the break. I get it more now because she's like my friend. Like, and I feel, but like, it was very easy for me to shut off and be like, I'm going to leave for 10 days and I'm just going to go have a good time. Whereas I know with the women in my life, it is like chemically just a totally different thing.
Yeah, it's frustrating because even leading up to it, you're like, am I making the right decision? Like, is someone going to care for him while I'm gone properly?
Yeah.
And I think it takes about 4 days in the bush for you to realize they're going to be fine.
Right.
Like, they're not even going to remember this probably.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's very interesting. And because I think it's not even, I think a lot of people have that. It's almost like even if we go on a 10-day hunt, I really only think there's like 3 or 4 magic days in the middle. I think for most people, the first 2 to 4 days is just settling in to being away from where you normally are. And then I think once you start getting close to days, 6, 7, and 8, people start stressing about having to leave and go back. And I really think it's those 3 or 4 in the middle where you're like truly present and truly disconnected from everything that happens at home.
Yeah, I agree. I was in a relationship for 5 years, and we had 4 kids between us. And you can imagine how hard it was to get out. And that's like, that was our love, hunting.
Right.
Like, that's where me and him would connect one-on-one. And it was just like impossible to get away, one.
Right.
But when we finally did, we were so exhausted for like the first 2 days of just like packing everything, like spending that time with the kids before we left. And then when you're finally out there, you're like, oh, this is like, we need this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so walk me through that transition. We go to school, we get out of school, relationships, kids and stuff. When does hunting kind of come back into the picture?
Yeah, so it came back, I would say close to 6 years ago. I started dating a guy. I guess it was about around 7 years ago. But I started dating a guy, and he was like, I want to get into hunting. And I was like, okay, sick. Yeah, like I love hunting. I loved being outdoors. I loved sports. So I was just like, let's do it. Let's dive right in. And he'd been once. Okay. And so he hadn't grown up in it at all. But we had both come from an athletic background. We loved hiking with our kids. And so I was just like, I don't know, we jumped right in. And we had like no gear. I bought my dad's old gun, and I told my dad we're coming up for a hunt. And so I was like, well, we'll start there, because my dad, he's been around it my whole life. And it was fun. We hopped on my dad's side by side, and my dad's kind of getting older, so he's more of a side by side hunter.
Sure.
And so we hopped on there, and our first buck that we saw, this guy, deer, like he's so excited. And it's like, okay, this this is gonna be a long day. Yeah. But we dove right in from there. Like, I think our second season, we drove up to the Yukon, went on a big moose hunt. We went up to his family cabin, did lots of hunts there. Like, we were hunting every weekend.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How did you go hunting in the Yukon?
Yeah, so that was kind of cool. His sister married a local in the Yukon, and we got a special guiding license. Okay. So it was neat because her husband had never actually, he'd been hunting once as well. So he applied for this special guiding license. And like, I'm talking like these guys are so green. So I was like, this is going to be interesting. Like, the bears are ginormous up there.
Yeah.
And so we had a grizzly bear tag.
Okay.
And a moose. And I can't remember what else we had. I think black bear tag. And that's it. And so we had no idea where to go. And we just went, the three of us. And we had a great time. We got a moose.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was. It was a good experience.
How was packing that out?
Oh, that was like the worst hunt of my life, I would say. But it really showed me who I was as a female hunter.
Right.
And it showed me that I can do this on my own if I needed to.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a good segue. Like, what are some of the challenges you think are unique? Because like there's certain, that's a lot of what I talk about on this podcast. There's certain challenges about hunting that are going to be true for everybody. Like, it's going to be tough to learn how to shoot a weapon. It's going to be tough to find spots. It's going to be tough to figure out gear. It's going to be tough to figure out how to navigate in the mountains. But are there elements of those kind of universal challenges that are particularly unique to being a woman? Or in addition to that, are there, other challenges that are also present for a woman that wouldn't be present for a man?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I have this curse. Every hunting trip that we go on, I get my time of the month.
Oh, wow.
No matter what. Like, I've never planned a hunting trip with guys that I haven't gotten my time of the month. And that's so frustrating. Solely on, like, the fact that every bear can smell you.
Oh, my God. Right.
And so you're constantly looking over your shoulder. You're constantly worried about, am I the one getting tracked right now?
Yeah.
So that's definitely a big challenge. But then just also, like, I think in your mind as a female, you just second guess, like, can I physically keep up?
Right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and it's funny. I think we all, like, I fancy myself, like, pretty in shape and stuff, and I still get worried. I remember when I went on a sheep hunt with, like, Spencer and Tristan a few years ago. They were like, I'm 45 now. Do you know what I mean? They're in their fucking 20s. And I was like, oh, my God, are they going to crush? And I was like, I held my own, and to be honest, I think I probably beat them up the hill more than they beat me up the hill. But Yeah, that's definitely. I think that's something people worry about. Like, and I would think too. I wouldn't worry so much about your hiking, but I could see getting worried about the packing.
Yeah.
Like I even look at smaller dudes. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, man, it's hard. Like when you put a full pack on of meat and try and get out a couple miles, like it's challenging mentally and physically.
Yeah, and we for the longest time, actually up until I split off with my ex, I didn't really spend the money on the gear.
Right.
I was like, oh man, these guys that spend this money on gear, like, they don't know real hunting. Like, show me if you can do it with an old pack board. And I always think people are so lucky to have all this fancy gear, because now that I have an actual, like, good backpack and good gear, like good pants, I'm like, oh wow, this is what it feels like to not sweat and be totally chafing the whole time.
Yeah, it definitely, there's something to be said for good gear.
Yeah.
100%. Do you find, are there any particular gear challenges that you've run into finding stuff like fit and or like any other like female related challenges as far as getting good gear?
Yeah, I think backpack was a big one. I'm 5'6".
Yeah.
And I'm sitting at like 150 pounds right now. And so I'd say my frame size, torso wise, I've got a smaller torso, really long legs. So I was like, finding a backpack where my frame felt like it was actually properly, the weight distribution is sitting properly. I was like, I don't feel like it is even when it's empty. So I'm like, imagine then adding 100 pounds in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a big challenge for me, and I still feel like I'm in that challenge. Like I'm running a Sitka bag right now, and this was my first hunt with it. I carried half my deer out, and I mean, it actually did pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I would think too, like you're an athletic woman. There's some other women that are more frail where I think it would be even more challenging. Mm-hmm. Like you're, in that. And backpacks have also come a long way, but they tend to focus, I would imagine torso length would be the limiting factor for sure, because like most of them are going to go from 24 to 26 inches, and you're probably more likely closer to like 18 or 20 into what you would want out of a pack.
For sure, yeah. And I think like female bodies change so much, right? So like I was CrossFitting before, so I was sitting at 175 pounds and like pure muscle. So getting up the mountain was a little bit harder at that time. And then now I'm just doing bodybuilding, and I'm finding that like my frame is just like, it's crazy.
Yeah. It was funny when I was like really focused on bodybuilding, I would shift up to 2 sizes in clothes. Like when I was at my biggest bulking, I was 272, and on stage I was 213. So like 60 pounds, you know what I mean? So yeah, going from like double XL to XL shirts, going from 38 pants to 34 pants, like luckily I get pretty good deals on gear these days, but it was like I almost had like 2 of everything. And the thing with hunting gear, like a t-shirt, I don't mind so much if it fits tight or if it fits loose, or like I can wear like cargo pants that are like a little bit loose, but specifically with hunting gear, like you want it to have a particular fit because you're undergoing this like athletic experience and chafing and other stuff. And when your body is shifting, 20 pounds for you, 40 pounds for me from, that can really affect the performance of the clothes. What about boots?
Yeah, so because I was big into hiking before I got into hunting, I've just been running Zamberlands.
Okay.
But I have pretty bad plantar fasciitis.
Yep. And
it kills me when you're doing like where I got this mule deer. It's like, I think I hiked 21K that day.
That's crazy.
Like you're way up there where we like to go, like you don't see a soul. And I love it. But like my feet are constantly angry at me.
Right.
And I'm like putting in orthotics, taking them out, putting in different insoles. So I haven't found my love for boots yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you tried sheep feet insoles?
No, I think you did message me about that.
Yeah, you should. The problem is they're really expensive. Like they're $200-300 by the time you get them to Canada and pay for all the shipping and stuff. I have Morton's neuroma in my right foot. I've had it removed and I've had stem cells and 2 different surgeries, and it still flares up from time to time. And so I feel you, because it's one of those things, like it doesn't matter what I like. There's just days when it decides to get inflamed and there's nothing that I can do about it. So, yeah, that can be really challenging. And feet are such a limiting factor. Like if your feet shit the bed, you're kind of done. You know what I mean? Like there's only so much. I feel like other stuff, you have a sore shoulder, okay, well, just don't use that arm. Like you can like work around it, but feet, you have far less. They're far more, your success and your ability to move around is far more dependent, obviously.
Yeah, and then when you're, hiking up terrain where you're just like shale straight up,
Yeah.
it's just like sometimes you get those like shocks from your toes all the way up your shin.
Yep.
And I'm just like, okay, this is ridiculous. like,
Yeah.
Anything could give at this point. Yeah.
What about clothing? Is there a particular brand you've found that fits well, or are you kind of wearing a hodgepodge of different stuff?
Yeah, I'm in a bit of a hodgepodge. Like it's kind of funny. I will hike up sometimes in my long johns,
Okay.
just because I'm a naturally warmer body. But
That's
then,
rare for a woman. Every girl I know is like cold all the time.
well, I am actually always cold, but
Oh.
for some reason, I don't know. I'm a sweaty. I just sweat. So
Okay.
I'll like strip off like quarter of the way up and I also don't know how to turn off my athletic side. So I'm like, I'm going to beat every guy up this mountain.
Right.
Which is so stupid because then I get up there and I'm like drenched. I have to change all my clothes. But it's for me, I'm like, oh, I need to get my workout in this morning. So I'll like
Right.
just kill myself going up a mountain and end up in my long johns. And then by the time I'm up at the top, I'll put on my favorite pants. I kid you not, are from Mech, and they were like $30.
Yep.
Yeah, they're just like your average hiking pant.
Yep.
Yeah, so I haven't really been able to find something that's like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a couple of the brands have explored women's sizing, and they've kept some of it and gotten rid of some of it. And it's the issue is it's just not a gigantic market. So the bottom line is these companies just aren't spending a lot of money in R&D. But I think the clothing in particular, like I think guns you can work around, packs you can work around, boots you can work around, but like the female shape is significantly different than the male shape. Like I noticed getting into bodybuilding, and especially when I was bulking, because you get bigger hips, bigger thighs, a bigger ass. And it's like all of a sudden I wasn't fitting any of the men's clothes, because especially Americans, they're all designed for these guys with like fat bellies and little twinky like stick legs. And so as soon as you have like legitimate legs, you don't fit into any of the men's clothing. So in order to get a pair of pants that would actually fit a woman, you're probably significantly oversized for what the pants are meant to be.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, when you get into bodybuilding, your legs become these like, a bit of tree trunks.
Yep.
But your waist stays small.
Yep.
So then you're just like constantly
Hopefully.
fighting that. But I tend to I like guys' stuff better because the patterns are nicer.
Yep.
It's not like, I don't want some like super tight pair of pants while I'm out in the bush. I'm not trying to look good. The deer don't care what I look like.
No.
So I tend to go with like men's clothes, and then it's, it's always swimming on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what about rifle? What caliber do you shoot? And do you find, is that challenge, like is shooting a smaller caliber more comfortable so your accuracy's better? Like what was that kind of evolution for you, getting used to firearms, then finding something that you liked?
Yeah, I shoot a 300 short, Tika, and I love it.
Wow. That's a pretty aggressive round.
Yeah. I want to feel my shoulder get ripped off while I'm shooting.
Okay.
I feel like because of where we hunt, there's so many grizzly bears.
Right.
I don't want to be having to put 3 rounds in a grizzly bear for it to be gone.
Yep.
Yeah. So I just, I bought that gun off my dad and I've stuck with it.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think that's a great round, and I think it's a great gun. It's funny. I had a 300 Win Mag Tika T3X that I sold to buy my Fierce, And the Fierce is just like this overpriced carbon thing that doesn't shoot any better than the Tikka did. And I could have owned 4 Tikkas for what the Fierce cost. And the major part of me is just like, I should have just kept my Tikka because it did everything the Fierce does, and it would have had like a few more grand to spend on other hunting related bullshit. No, I think that's great. And I'm always a bit of a fan of like a little bit more bullet is better than a little bit less bullet. You know what I mean? Especially in BC where it's like you don't really want to be chasing after animals with poorly placed shots if you don't have to. So, okay, so let's circle back to the evolution of hunting, because the ultimate, and for people listening, yes, we're going to get to the story of the mule deer, but we're going to work our way there slowly. So where we left off was you transitioning back into hunting. You'd done the Yukon hunt. I think maybe now is an interesting time to ask, well, what is it about hunting that you find attractive? And I could add a lot more context, but I almost don't want to ask a leading question. Like, why do you feel drawn to hunting?
Good question. I thought about this when you asked me to come on the podcast. I was like, I bet you he's going to ask me this question. I think once you transition from being an athlete, you really become in this lull of like, what's next?
Right.
Like, I have aged out on most of the sports that I wanted to play, and you become a little bit stagnant, and you're just like, no drive, nothing really forcing that. And so when I started hiking more, and we got a dog that was like big, and like she was a hunter. Well, I made her that, but it gave me this drive. So then being stuck at the coast here, because I share my son with his father.
Yep.
It feels very hard when you can't live somewhere that you choose to live. You're like, okay, I'm stuck here. I got to make the best of it. I'll take the opportunity when I can to get outside into the forest, because that's truly where I want to be. So then I think my first experience solo hunting, my ex dropped me off in the bush. It was dark. I went and we had made a tree stand the summer before for myself. And I sat there and I watched the sun come up and, the forest come alive. And I was just sitting there by myself. I was freezing to death. And I just was like, not a lot of people get to experience this on their own. And you get to go through in your mind so many experiences that you've had and just kind of think about them. And I just was able to do so much self-reflection on my own in the bush that I was like, okay, this is so healthy for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I hope that kind of answered you. It
makes a lot of sense. And the funny thing is, I think it probably speaks, and I'm sure we don't need to get into details, but I'm sure you've had some struggles and challenges that led you to the level of self-awareness that you do have. Because I think without that, I think the things that you're talking about that attract you to hunting and attract you specifically to solo hunting are the things that stop most other people from it. Like, for instance, people always want to know, like, what boots do I buy? What tent do I buy? And especially when it comes to solo hunting, I always try and tell people it's not your boots or your tent that's going to send you home. It's your mind. Because out here, when the cell service goes away and there's no social media and there's no distractions, the only thing you're left with is your own mind. And it is crazy the things that come up. You'll think about girls that you broke up with 20 years ago, that you start taking responsibility for shit that you didn't think was your fault. And it's like, it is crazy. The like revelations and the self-reflections that you go through. And I think that is actually can be too much for some people. So that's really interesting that was part of what drew you to it. I think for me as well, because I was never like a competitive athlete, but I did always have things in my life that were like a source of purpose. And it was like, they invigorated my competitive nature or whatever it is. But they always only seemed to get part of what I was looking for. And I feel like there's something about hunting that like brings it all together. Like there's mental challenges, there's physical challenges, there's emotional challenges. You also get to spend time in the outdoors. Like I used to compete in CrossFit. I used to compete in jiu-jitsu, and like those scratched part of that itch, but there was something that was lacking. And I find hunting has this way of bringing all those domains together. Like I think it's one of the most challenging things holistically a person can try and do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you nailed it there. And I think when you compete in like a team sport or an individual sport, you get into this mind frame and you break down so many barriers in yourself. And so hunting does that for you as well. Because, I mean, so many people, I just give up right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn back around. This is too hard. This is too much. I can't carry that. You play all these mind games. And if you can just silence that person in your head and remind yourself, like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful, and look around and just like feel gratitude rather than like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this, then it's a game changer.
Right.
You fall in love with the sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think that then becomes a superpower that you can use for other stuff. Because I think it's just a microcosm, like in your day-to-day life. Like I always come back from the backcountry and it's always like everything seems easier because it's like, I mean, it's not that hard. You know what I mean? I don't have to climb 3,000 feet in elevation today. Like there's nothing that bad that's going to happen. How did you find the whole killing part?
That's funny. I think because I grew up in a hunting family, I've been around it my whole life. This was my first deer I shot by myself.
Okay.
And I was completely alone. And the guys had to talk me into going that day. Like I was just like, I had my time of the month. I was like, maybe I should take a camp day. Like I'm not feeling this. And they were like, you're going to regret this. Like, you need to come up today. This is a good day. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, because we get up at 5 a.m. sometimes and head out in the dark mostly. And so I was like, you know what? In my head, I was like, these guys, they want to go to the back lake. And that lake hike is like treacherous. And I was like, I'm not going to go there with them. Like, screw that. You know what? I'm going to go at my own pace. I'm going to do my own hike today. I'll let them go ahead and I'll take my time going up. I'll have a snack halfway. And so in my head, I'm like rationalizing this whole day ahead of me. And so away they went and I watched them like it was kind of on a mountainside and you can kind of look across the valley and I saw one of them hiking up and I was like, okay, we had ditched one earlier that went up a different face. And yeah, I was just by myself and taking my time. And I heard a little crackling, like probably 180 yards away. And I looked over and I was like, are you joking me? Like, they're way gone to go look for this king. And like, he's just hanging out here with me. Yeah. So the killing part for me, I thought was fine when I was with other people. Like they're like, oh my gosh, they're shaking you. They're getting
almost
you out
get
of
caught up in it.
Yeah. For this guy, I, had like such a moment to like take a minute. I lost my grandma this year and she was really, really dear to my heart. Okay. And so this hunt that I was going into, I was like still really struggling with that. And I was like, you know what? I think I need this. Like I need to go away for this hunt and really just take in the experience I went through because I was lucky enough to be by her side when she went. And that was a different experience, let me tell you. But I knew that taking a life after losing something like that would be different for me.
Sure.
I was like, I think this is going to hit me a little different. And I think it's really cool, and maybe it's God divine, that I got to experience it by myself.
Right.
Because I definitely sat back and was like, thank you, Grandma. Like, thank you, God. And like, that felt different. It hit different. Because I think before I maybe didn't value it as much as I should.
Right.
And maybe that's just because I was around it at such a young age. And now I'm like, a life is so much more beautiful. Yeah. And I was so much more thankful for this moment.
So walk me through, because we're talking about it now, let's back up a little bit. So it's like a big family hunt that we're that you went on this year, like a deer camp type situation?
No, so I've gone for a couple years now, and it's my ex and guys that he in the fire hall because he was a fireman.
Okay.
So it was his captain, and I believe his captain's dad has had this honey hole per se for 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so family hunt for them.
Okay.
And he passed away, and his son, much like yourself, actually, he's got a vegan wife, so he's not allowed to bring any of the meat home.
What? Yes. I have hundreds of pounds of meat. Just to clarify for people listening, meat comes home in this house.
But yeah, so it's interesting. Best hunting partner ever. You get all the meat.
Totally.
Right?
That's
and
crazy.
And he just loves being out there, just like us. Yeah, so it's his honey hole. He introduced it to us. I'm sure he would shoot me if I ever went there without him.
Yeah.
Which
is appropriate, by the way. The whole like lack of etiquette around hunting spots, I think, like I miss a little bit of the old school, afraid to get your ass kicked kind of mentality. Like there's a right way and a wrong way to treat spots. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I concur. I think,
yeah, he's put in the years there.
Totally.
And like we were just lucky enough to be invited.
Totally.
And I was the first female to ever go there.
Wow.
So he said on the first night, like he always cracks jokes, but he's like, my dad would be rolling over in his grave right now.
Right.
Right. And then so for me to get this deer, he was just like, oh man, what my dad would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fun. Yeah. So this year there was only four
What's
of
camp
us.
setup? Are we wall tent? Are we trailers?
Yeah, wall tent.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this year we did 10 days. I didn't do the full 10 days. I think I did 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would head home if I shot that.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a typical day would have been like more of like a group style hunt. Like you guys would have headed out together, but on this particular day, you decided to head out by yourself.
We always head out together in the dark, and then it's such a big area that we just branch off. So we never spend the day with anyone.
Is there any communication out there? Like, can you text? Is there any cell coverage? Or are you just like, I'll see you back at camp at time, whatever?
Yeah, there's no service for about 2 hours, but we all have inReaches.
Gotcha.
And then walkie-talkies, which sometimes work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So walk through the actual kill for me. So you're walking along. Are we taking a little break and then you look up and you see this guy, or what's the situation?
I was dying.
Okay.
I was literally like cursing that I even went out that day. And I was like, the hill that I decided to go up, it's straight up. So you're like actually touching on your hands, and you're walking with your feet too, obviously. And it's pretty heavily treed, but you can kind of see a gullieway, and you can see across. And there's little, like, obviously holes in trees where you can, sometimes see a whitetail or whatever. So I had never gone up that side. I was like, I'm going to go up this side. That's crazy that I've never gone that. And there was a bit of snow, and I saw some grizzly bear tracks on my way up that side. And I was like, okay, this should be interesting. Like, I wonder if I'm going to run into him today, because every hunt I have.
Okay.
Yeah, in this area. And so I made it like maybe
close encounters, or just like, I see you over there, I'm over here, go your separate ways?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I was about quarter of the way up the hill. I was taking a sip of water, just dying, and I like glanced over because I heard a ruffle, and I was thinking it was one of the guys. And yeah, there he was, probably about 180 yards.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then walk me through the shot process. What do? You're wearing your pack at this point?
Yeah, I was wearing my pack. My gun wasn't even ready to go. Like, I was just not prepared.
Yeah.
I like quickly threw off my pack and like tried to take a standing shot.
Does he know you're there at all yet at this point?
I think so. Like, I think that I might have actually fluffed him from my side, and he kind of went up a little bit.
Okay.
But then also I know that my buddy Clayton, I had seen him like probably 40 minutes before that walking up exactly where he was. So he probably smelled
Right.
Clayton, was like, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
And so I had stayed where I was. And so I'm trying to take a shot and I'm just this. Like, I'm like, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
Like, this is not going to be good. So I just...
and 180 yards for an offhand shot is no joke.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
even not shaking, that's a challenging shot.
Yeah, so I just quickly laid down, or I tried to put it on a branch. I put my gun down, the branch broke, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my heart is just like, this thing's gone. I quickly like look again in my scope. I'm like, okay, it's still there. So I'm like, he's standing rear end to me, kind of like looking back this way, and I'm like, well, he doesn't know where I am, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So I quickly lay down on my pack, and I've got him in my scope, and I'm just like, okay, like, this is your time, girl. Like, he's not going to turn for you. Like, you just got, like, I was like, okay, I'm not going to put it in his butt. Like, I just don't feel good about that.
Nor should you.
No. So it's just, and like, so funny. The guys are like, if I saw this deer in my scope, I would have shot it anywhere. But I was like, you know, I'm here to feed my family, like me and my son too. So I want to save as much meat as I can. And so I just ended up getting him in the front shoulder.
Okay.
Yeah. And
he just went down for the first shot?
Yeah. And it sucked because I was radioing them. They heard my shot, obviously. And they're like, who was that? Who was that? And then didn't hear anything from them. And I'm like, I shot a deer. Like, help me. And it's so funny. My ex, he's like, all I heard was the shot because he was so far away. So he's like, I heard the shot. Then all I heard his radio is, I shot a deer. So he's like, did you even take a moment? I was like, maybe not. I don't know. Everything was shaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at this point, you walk over to the deer?
No. So I let it die because I had heard it. Obviously taking its last breaths from where I was. And I waited, and then Clayton had said, wait where you're shot from. And I had already left there because I was, so excited.
Of course.
And I was like, okay, I'll go. And so in my head, I'm like, I'm going to go back and find where I shot from and stand there. And then I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm scaling a mountainside trying to find this one unique looking bush. Like, not going to happen. So I'm like, screw this. I went down into the gullyway, and I actually like seen where this deer was rubbing everywhere. And I was like, whoa, this is so cool. Like, this is going to be a nice deer. I can already tell. And I went
So at this point, you don't know he's like this significant?
No.
Okay.
No. Because
you just saw some antlers, knew it was
his
a
head
buck.
was kind of doing this. He was eating something, and I was just like, it was any buck season. So I was like, you know what?
See some tines.
Yeah.
We're here for some meat. Let's kill a buck.
Yeah,
Totally.
I'm not here for anything
Certainly not going to pass one up.
other than meat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we all agree on when we go up. We're like, you know what? We're here for meat. We're not here for trophies. Like, let's feed our families.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to where I thought I had shot him. And by this point, Clayton is radioing me. And all of a sudden I hear bang. And I'm like, what? Like, did I not kill it? Like, I was just like, in my head, I was just like, oh, so defeated at this point. I'm like, someone else got my deer.
Right.
Turns out, no, they just shot another one.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good day.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So I was just waiting there, and then I'm like, okay, I start stripping stuff out because it's warm. It's a really hot day. And I just start looking, and then Clayton comes and joins me, and it was literally 10 feet from where I was originally standing. So it's so blended under a tree that I just couldn't even see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your first thoughts when you walk up on this deer?
Oh, I was like, oh, wow. And then, just so excited. And
What's
I think
Clayton
I was
say?
more relieved that I had found it.
There's always a sense of anxiety
Yeah.
when you take a shot and you don't have visual confirmation that the animal goes down. Like, it's one of the worst feelings in the world.
And the way he bucked, I was like, okay, I got him.
Yep.
But I have, unfortunately, been through a scenario where I didn't find my deer.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
And I also think it's only a matter of time. Like, if you hunt long enough, that is going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard on your soul because you feel like, okay, I've maybe taken a life, maybe not.
Yep.
And if I have wounded this animal, like it's not feeding my family. You just go through all these scenarios. And I mean, I've had that with a bear, and I still to this day think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's Clayton say when he sees the deer?
He's just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, this might be one of the best deers coming out of here. And then he's like, oh, wait, nope. Like, you know, he's so like, no, mine's bigger. I was like, okay. And he's just, you know, he's just excited for me. And he's just like, well, as your guide. And I'm like, we better get a selfie together. And, you know, he's just excited. Yeah. But he was a big body.
Yeah.
Like, I would say this boy was sitting around 350 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big ass deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And old. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
how did you find, I'm interested in the social media reaction, one, to women posting, you know, grip and grins, and two, a deer like this. Like, do you get a lot of condescending bullshit? Is it a positive feedback? Like, what tends to be the reaction?
yeah, so I posted it on Hunt BC on Facebook.
Okay.
And I got a lot of flack saying that it was photo edited.
Like, what did they think was edited?
I don't know, but I thought it was pretty funny. I was like, okay, that's interesting. No, but that's fine. And then, you know, you get a lot of flack of like, well, who helped you pack it out?
Right.
Yeah. So there's instantly those naysayers that are like, you can't do that on your own.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I probably could have, like, if the guys weren't around, I mean, it would have taken me a couple trips.
Sure.
But I could have definitely packed
Oh, that
stuff.
most men are not packing out a full size, like, BC mule deer in the middle of the rut. Do you know what I mean? Like, no, that's bullshit. It wouldn't even be responsible, to be honest with you. Like, it wouldn't make sense. Yeah, I do find that funny. And it was like, when was the last time most of these guys carried out their, like lots of people hunt with people. You don't have to be a woman to hunt with people.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay.
And I don't think I got a lot of flack on Instagram because I actually just started my hunting page on Instagram.
Right.
And so I don't have a huge following, so there's not a lot of people saying much. But I think the biggest thing, Clayton, is like, I don't want you posting any kind of view.
Right.
Because he's like, I don't want people coming to our honey hole. And I'm
Yep.
like, yeah, I get it, 100%. So
Yeah, you had a great shot, though.
yeah.
Like, just into the trees like that, I think is a fantastic solution to the problem.
Yeah,
Yep.
you got to get really selective. And I think that's what's interesting about my dad hunting growing up and my brothers. I don't think they took a lot of photos.
Right.
Yeah, because looking back, I'm like, wow, they really didn't take much photos of their stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got some stuff. I don't have it, but there is some stuff from hunts with my dad and that side of the family. And it's like, I know people are always like kind of shitting on it because it's like, we shouldn't be doing this for, you know, glorification and that kind of stuff. But it's like, the whole reason we used to always do this was for the memories of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's one of the reasons I film my hunts. I didn't even really think about like growing it into something that would eventually become my career, or I didn't even really care about followers. I came back from my first solo kill and I was trying to describe the experience to people. And I was like, I'm a pretty articulate guy and I'm failing to communicate the true essence of this experience. Like, I'm not able to. And I was like, there needs to be a better way. And then that was when I decided to start filming things. And then it kind of became about my daughter in a way. Like, I want her to have this library that she can look back on and understand like why her dad is who her dad is and the types of things I've done, and the growing it in the audience and all that other kind of stuff kind of came after that. But this is why I push back against the whole anti-grip and grin movement. Like, there was these guys at Meat Eater doing these Trophy Picks 2.0 campaign for a while, and they didn't want grip and grins because it kind of gives anti-hunters ammunition, right? And my thing was, it's a part of our culture. It's not about glorification on social media. It's about creating these snapshots that you're going to remember for the rest of your life. And as soon as you see that, like, there's pictures of me moose hunting with my dad at 12 years old. And like, I don't remember a whole lot from my childhood, but when I see that picture, all this stuff comes flooding back for me because of everything that it's related to and everything it reminds me of. And I think the same is true of the grip and grins that we put on social media. And it's not something I'm willing to give up because it might offend some people, or because, people can use it to further their own agendas. So I think being sensitive about the picture, so that, I definitely catch flack for filming stuff, but so that it doesn't give away people's spots, I think is a very responsible thing to do. But I also think it's important to put those pictures up because it deserves to be celebrated. Like, what you did was fucking cool. And it's like, you should be able to be happy about that and proud about it and share it with people and get that positive feedback from people.
Yeah. And I think, like, at the end of the day, you're feeding your family.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going out to kill an animal just to kill an animal. And if you are, like, shame on you. Like, I think that's where the trophy hunting gets into a sticky situation, and that's where a lot of people have their flack. But, I mean, have you seen meat prices right now?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's
Everything's crazy.
Yeah, and so if I'm able to feed my growing boy on lean meat that's got no, like, hormone agenda and anything added to it, to me, I'm glorifying this animal's life. And this animal lived a wonderful life and, like, climbed those mountains. And you better believe that I climbed those mountains and busted my ass for, like, days on days to be able to have this meat. And then and the work's not done after that. You get home, I process all my meat myself, and we're cutting meat for hours and days sometimes, grinding it ourselves and then preparing it. And, like, it doesn't just stop on the mountain. Right? So I think that if you're taking a photo with that animal to have memories, of course, why wouldn't you? It's like it is a circle of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your boy think about mum hunting?
He loves it.
Yeah.
I mean, he just, like, I think my son is never, like, in shock of the things I do anymore. Like, I got a Harley 5 years ago. I ride that around. He's just like, my mom has a Harley. Like, from such a young age, I was never just, like, a regular mom. So he's just like, oh yeah, of course you hunt.
Right.
Yeah.
Does he have, I seen some pictures of him going out with you duck hunting a while ago. Does he have aspirations? Do you think he'll want to do it?
Oh yeah, he got his core, and it's pretty cool. He's pretty high ADHD.
Okay.
And he doesn't excel in a classroom.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this should be interesting. When I dropped him off to do his core, the guy was like, oh yeah, I'm going to put him with the adult group. And I was like, oh no, like, okay, good luck, drop him off. And the next day he was so excited. He was reading his book that night, and I was like, this is weird. Like, this is not like him at all.
Right.
And the next day he's just, like, amped on going, and I drop him off again. And the guy at the end of it was like, your son had every question answered. Like, had his hand up for everything. He was so into it. And he passed the course. I was like, what? Like, are you sure we're talking about the same guy? And so I have taken him out I took him out for a long time, but to have him come out with his own tags is, it's going to be such a good experience this year.
Yeah.
We weren't really lucky last year. He choked up on a bear. I think that's a big animal for your first one.
Yep.
Yeah, and he just said he was scared. I had a really bad run-in with a bear on my own, and I told him that story, and I think that scared him. Okay. I probably should have left that out for the bedtime stories.
Yeah.
Because now he's definitely apprehensive of that.
Right.
He's been around us killing quite a bit of animals since he was young, but hopefully I can get him on his first deer this year. Yeah. I bought him a 308 for Christmas.
Okay.
Last year.
That's a great gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be fun to see if he can do it this year.
That's awesome. What does your year look like for hunting? Do you have specific hunts that you plan for and schedule stuff around that? Are you more like reactionary and it's like, because I know you're busy, just see what I can get out for? Like, what does that tend to look like for you?
I definitely plan out a few hunts in the year. This group of guys that I go with, it's like a non-negotiable for me.
Yep. That's the big one in the
Yeah.
middle that you kind of, yeah.
Yeah, so we go just right before, because the season changed for any buck up in the area that we go.
Yep.
We have to go before Halloween. So I've spent every Halloween there for the last few years.
Okay.
Which it sucks when you're a mom. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
But I'm also just like, it's Halloween. It's just another day.
Yeah.
And my son really doesn't really get fluffed up on stuff like that. So it's
Okay.
fine. But yeah, so that's a big hunt that I plan around. And then the other one, I a couple years ago was planning a sheep hunt with my dad, and unfortunately had to cancel like right before we went because of my being a mom.
Right.
So because he's getting a little bit older, I do want to make that my priority this year and get out with him.
Like your dad's getting older, so getting in a sheep hunt while he's still physically capable of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
And I think those are the memories that you remember forever, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you were saying, being out with your dad. Those are times you don't take for granted.
No, I've brought my dad. He still lives in Ontario, and I brought him here twice for elk hunts, and we've been skunked really bad both times. Last year, I brought him out. No, 2 years ago, I brought him out. We hunted for 10 days, him and my brother, and then they went home. I came home for 3 days, and I went back and I arrowed my bull like on like the fourth or fifth day. No, it was the sixth or seventh because it was the last day that I had to hunt. But it was like this bittersweet text because I'm like, I'm sorry you didn't see any elk, but I killed this big thing today. And so one of my big bucket list items is getting my dad back out here for an elk hunt. Because it is true, even though we don't kill anything, both the times he's been here, have been like awesome times, like just spending time together. And the one time we did a jet boat trip up to Muskwa, and for a dude from Ontario, that might have been his first time ever to BC. Like maybe he came out here when he was a kid. I don't know. But when you drive all the way up to Fort Nelson and then get in a jet boat and go 5 hours up to Muskwa, it's like National Geographic shit. Like normal human beings don't see stuff like this on a daily basis. And he was just like, I don't even think he cared that we didn't kill anything. Like his mind was just blown.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's how we felt about our drive up to Whitehorse. We were like, this is like so beautiful.
Even the drives, like, spending 16 hours in a truck with my dad driving to Fort Nelson, like you have these conversations that you wouldn't normally have. And we talked earlier about kind of being forced into this self-reflection because you don't have anything distracting you. I think the same thing happens with people when, like, one of the things I'm trying to focus more on this year is less solo hunting and more hunting with other people, because I think it's something I've neglected for a while. And I think there's really strong opportunities to build relationships and get to know people better, because I think we pay more attention to the people that we're with when we're out there, because we're not distracted by all the stuff and that extended period of time when you're like waking up with the person and hanging out with the person and going to bed with the person. And it's like, you get into these really deep conversations that you wouldn't normally get into.
Yeah, and I love that. Like, we, and this guy's hunt that I go on, one of the guys, he's a lot older, and he stays at camp.
Right.
And
yeah, you see that a lot with like the old, like they just like to get away, and like they love being at camp. And even if they can't, like when you go up to Muskwa in the jet boat, there's all kinds of old dudes that are just like at all these like family camps, and they're just hanging out, and they love when everybody's coming back at night and telling the stories, and 100%.
Oh, totally. And like, I just love him. Like every year I'll spend a day at camp with him.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's just good to, I don't know, lean into that. And like, you learn so much from, I don't want to say elderly. He's not elderly, but like, he is an elder to me. So you learn so much from them. And I love hearing their stories. And it's probably not very often that they get a woman like just hanging out with them for the day on a hunting camp.
One of the things that I was curious about too, are there advantages to it, do you think? Because if I was just to think about it, I would assume like people would always be more inclined. Like I think men sometimes see other men as competition. And I think it's like I've been trying to find hunting mentors for literally the last decade. and like I can't find dude because it's like, oh, you're gonna steal my spot, or you know what I mean? Like if you don't come into it as a family or have like close work friends or stuff, it is hard to find other dudes with a lot more experience that want to spend time with you. Do you think there's any advantages there to being a woman? Because maybe guys feel more incentivized to want to help you?
Yeah, I think 100%. And, you know, you always, when I do go out with, like I just went out with the carnivore guys on a hunt. And, you know, it's funny to hear the stories of these girls messaging them and saying, like, can you take my boyfriend out hunting? Like, could you imagine, like, for me, as if I was a guy and, like, you know, my girlfriend was messaging some guys group? Like, no way. I would be, like, so embarrassed. But
Same.
But it's a fact. Like, these women are probably watching their men leave, you know, for 2 weeks at a time and coming back with nothing.
Yeah.
Like, that would hurt. And, like, they're probably just like, oh, they probably just really want
I've done
something.
that a lot, so I can relate. It hurts.
But yeah. So it's just like, you know, how do they go about finding a mentor?
Yeah, it's hard. It really is. And the thing that I've come back to and what I didn't do enough earlier on that I recommend to people do is like the social groups and stuff. And there's some whose principles I don't agree with that I don't need to get into. But I do think, you know, like going and helping Wild Sheep Society do like a sheep count on the weekend. Like, I think building relationships that aren't just, can you take me to a honey hole, but like actually getting to know people in the hunting industry and letting them know that you're just a good dude who's trying to learn some stuff. That would be my advice to myself 10 years ago, is like, stop thinking you have to figure out everything yourself and just go participate in more of the group. But I'm also a hardcore introvert, and I know I would never do that shit because I get like hardcore social anxiety when I think about being around groups of people.
Really?
Oh yeah, hardcore.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I hate. Yeah. For years, even if I go shopping and I'll be like in a jean store and the person comes walking towards me, I just leave. Like the idea of like having to speak to strangers, I hate it.
It's funny, but you can do this, but because it's something you love.
It's one-on-one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was also a DJ for 10 years, and there's a couple, which everybody thought was crazy because I'm this hardcore introvert, but I'm in front of large groups of people. When there are expectations, like, you know what your role is and I know what my role is, I'm fine. And that's like when you're a DJ, or I've had speaking engagements, or as a consultant for a very long time and used to have to speak to large groups at companies. I can do that, no problem. But if you drop me off at like a business networking event, I freeze up because it's like, I don't know how I'm supposed to engage with you people, and I don't do small chat. Like, I don't know how to do small chat. Like, I can sit here and have this really deep, meaningful, this is the first real conversation face-to-face we've ever had. But because we're talking about real shit, and I'm honestly interested, and I'm like getting to know you, and like people are being honest, I feel very comfortable having those conversations. But it's the light, superficial shit. I'm just like, I'm useless at it. I can't do it to save, which I'd actually like to work on more, because just as you're trying to grow a business or get into sales or any of those types of things, if I was going to give advice to people coming up, it's like, you need those skills because it's going to help you like later on. I was brought up by a single mother as well. And my dad was more like the salesman, and later went on to be a business manager and stuff. And I think if I'd have grown up more around him, maybe I would have had more of that stuff, because that was more his personality type. But yeah.
Interesting. See, and I, at a young age, worked at Cactus Club. So you're like thrown into every kind of person out there. And then from there on became a hairdresser and a barber. Right. So like, I am comfortable around any human, I think, and can hold a conversation. But I think since COVID, I've more become introverted and realized that I enjoy a smaller group of people. Yep. And I'm more okay being on my own too. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if that's age as well.
Yeah, could be. Yeah. I, in general, prefer fewer, deeper connections over more superficial connections. Like, it just feels more natural to me. So So what are some of your goals in hunting? You mentioned some of the solo stuff. Are there particular hunts that are like milestone hunts for you, or do you have any goals that you're trying to achieve in the next few years? Like, does score matter to you? Like, what are the types of things that matter to you in hunting?
I think I want to probably somehow get on to a bison.
Okay.
Yeah. My dad got a draw this year and couldn't go.
Ugh.
I know. And so that was maybe one of my goals in hunting. And then my sheep is a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think a couple years ago when I had to cancel, that hurt my dad's feelings. And then, they're always like, oh, do I invite you? What if you don't come? It's a big planning thing,
It's
too.
huge. And you're relying on it because if you don't take the spot, somebody else is going to take, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big one. And then I just kind of want to cultivate, and like, I wouldn't say a woman hunting area zone kind of like friendship, but I do want to find a female like-minded hunter that I can go out with.
Yeah.
I do enjoy guys, like they're fine. I grew up with brothers. I've been around guys my whole life. But I think it would be so fun to go in the bush for a 7-day pitch or something with a female.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I just think that if she's up for that, then she's probably like-minded like me.
For sure.
And I don't have a lot of friends like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I even finding guys who want to go do the stuff that I do is challenging. So I can imagine how challenging it would be to find other women who want to do the stuff. Like it's a significantly smaller group.
Yeah, and then some of them, in the States, I was chatting with this one girl, but she already has like a big following, and she probably just thinks I want to like piggyback her,
right?
Her like following. But I'm like, I just want to come in the bush with you. Like,
Yeah.
I just love it. I want to experience everything and anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big one. And then I think just getting my kid out there.
Right.
Yeah, would be good. I think he's so caught up in the city, and I wasn't raised in the city. I'm not a city kid. Yes, I enjoy dressing up once in a while. I don't really like big groups either. So I think he's getting caught up in city life.
Yep.
Because he has no choice. And I just know deep down he is like me and would excel way better in the bush. So I'm like, I just want to focus on getting him out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, thank you very much for coming over.
Yeah.
That was great.
Thanks for having me.
I'll put the link to your Instagram down below in the show notes. Is there anything you want to close out with or informate for people who might want to keep track of what's going on?
Yeah, I think if you're a rad chick out there and you want to be
I'm
friends.
sure 1% of my listeners are female, so
Sick.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I don't know. Just if you're sitting on the idea of starting hunting, just do it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need the fancy gear. You can start with nothing. Like I started in my brother's, my dad's hand-me-downs. Like, you don't have to start with big fancy stuff. Like, I still don't run super fancy gear. My stuff's not great. Yeah.
No, I think that's a good note to end on. And I think it goes to other hunting stuff too. Like, if you're scared about a solo hunt, just go do a weekend trip. If you're scared about your first mountain hunt, just go do that too.
Or even just a day.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, my first solo hunt was just a day bear.
Yeah.
And it was just 2 hours from here.
Yeah.
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 Just get out there.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you.